Hernandez. I'm an international student in the Faculty of Environmental Studies at York. And the issue I would like to raise here is I come from the economics background. That's my background. So when you enter in a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary program, you expect to learn different approaches, right? And find a balance between humanities, social sciences, and science. So my question is for the professors in this room is how do they manage this issue with PhD students? Because we have discussed something about undergrad programs. But how do you do this with PhD students?
Marvelous question. So, interdisciplinary doctoral programs, how do they work?
I'm Amanda Batista. I'm at York as well as Active Environmental Studies, PhD. My question, I think, I feel like we talk a lot amongst our faculty and amongst, it seems like in this room, about what interdisciplinarity is and why it's important. And I think my question is, okay, so now what do we do about it? I know that's clearly what we're here to talk about, but I would really love to talk about some specific things that we can think about doing, whether that's reimagining ourselves, so that we don't necessarily have to fit ourselves within the structure of what's going on. I know that's not really reality, but yeah, I think what next, right? What kind of action can we actually take?
Okay, very good. Paul?
Paul Kay, former chair of Environmental Resource Studies here at Waterloo. I think I'm going to address the issue tomorrow.
You probably should. There. Bob, you can also kick it off to tomorrow since you're speaking tomorrow.
I'm Bob Pelkey from Trent University Environmental and Resource Studies Program. We haven't changed our name. So I guess we're now required to think about it. I think the question I would be to continue Ingrid's query about, is environmental science privileged over other humanities and social science disciplines, and how is that the case, and is that necessarily a bad thing?
Okay. Stephen.
Stephen Sharper, Center for Environment, University of Toronto. And I think my question would be the increasing roles I see of corporations in university contributions and in naming and in shaping curriculum. And a cognate question is the kind of privileging of certain sciences over others, and particularly an assault on environmental science in Canada at the federal level, and how that's going to affect environmental studies programs.
Okay. Sir.
I'm Andrew Mark. I'm a PhD at the Faculty of Environmental Studies at York. And my question is, what is the place of performance art in environmental studies, if there is any place for it?
Okay. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah King. I'm a Shirk postdoc at the Queen's School of Environmental Studies, which is talking about changing its name soon.
Excuse me, and also heading off.
And I'm also heading off to a tenure stream position in sustainability studies at an American university in the summer. And my question is actually about how we find a way to have professional conversations outside of our universities across disciplines. Because I want to have conversations that include biologists, toxicologists, and other scientists, even though I am not myself one. But I think it's pretty difficult for us to actually have those conversations, even when we can manage them within our universities. And the reason I'm asking that is because I'm having great conversations like that at Queen's, where environmental studies grew out of biology. And people were very interested in this conference. But when it came to anyone actually getting here, I was the only person who was already coming. And it's not that they aren't informed, literate, interested, invested, talking about these things already, but to add another conference, the Environmental Studies Association conference already is environmental studies and not environmental studies and sciences. So, anyway.
I'm going to ask a pragmatic question because you can see my administrative hat running when I ask it. I think that budgetary models, as they're emerging in universities, are really stressing interdisciplinary programs. And so what strategies can we come up with to counteract the effect of budgetary cuts, budgetary reorganizations? We organized a special development program which basically brought in extra money to help us with budgetary. What other strategies are there to deal with the pressures that universities are putting on interdisciplinary programs that are very difficult to fight because they're money problems?
Okay, Simon.
No, I'm scratching my head. I don't want to go any further.
But we're going.
We're going here. I'm fine. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I'm Simon Apoloni, doctoral candidate at University of Toronto in two streams, the Department of Study of Religion and the Centre School for the something school environment. I have two concerns. One is the epistemological domain, but I think I'd like to return to that in the larger discussion of tomorrow. But the other is more teleological. When is environmental studies, sustainability, whatever you might want to call it, the food banks of the academic world? In other words, we brought in food banks for immediate need. They haven't left, and the need is still there. Or is environmental studies, however you see it, something to respond to a crisis we see, and is the ultimate aim to have no need for environment, because anyone and anything anyone does, whether he or she be a geologist or a literary scholar, it always has the earth as primary. So I'm thinking, what is the ultimate goal in mind, and is that shared by the larger community?
Okay. Randy?
My name is Randy Haluza-Delay, and I'm at the King's University College in Edmonton, not one of the other two that are also named King something or other, here in Canada. And I'm not actually formally affiliated with our environmental studies program, because it's this hub and spokes thing, and I'm a spoke that fell off that wheel. But anyway, I mean, most of the questions that have been brought up are very interesting. I guess the most important thing for me is to try to develop a strong environmental studies network and work across Canada in all the different provinces. I mean, there's a big center in Ontario with York and Waterloo and Guelph and all the ones that are represented here. But there's less strength in some of the other places. And I think that's a national network, all the way up into the Arctic, into the belly of the beast in Alberta and things like that. And Doug and I were on the board of ESAC a number of years ago together when it was challenging to try to develop that networking. We tried to do a few things, and so this is a really interesting, resurgence of pretty dramatic and fairly high level interest, and that's very encouraging and exciting to see.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Mark Hathaway, I'm a PhD candidate in adult education and environmental studies at the University of Toronto, so Centre for Environment, School for the Environment, whatever it is. I guess. Yeah, I have a lot of things in my mind, but certainly the integration between science, humanities, social science would be one thing, but the other one is how to help students who, I think students often come into environmental studies with a lot of passion and wanting to do something good for the world. And obviously, we want to give the academic rigor and the information and the skills, but how do we make sure that passion stays alive and matures in a way that they can really be useful and become agents of change in wider society? I think that's, to me, is a really key question.
Okay. Nick?
I like that very much. My name's Nick Garside. I'm loosely affiliated with Laurier Brantford in the Contemporary Studies program, and they're in the process right now of creating streams within that interdisciplinary core, and one of the streams is the environmental studies stream. I guess the thing I'm most interested in is figuring out the uniqueness of interdisciplinary and environmental studies and learning how to celebrate it rather than see it as a problem. Like, we constantly find it as something we've got to fight against. How do we fit in? How do we say no? And say, no, this is what we can be and this is what we ought to be striving.
Okay. In the spirit of inclusivity, I think I'd like to include our video team, and we're going to start with you, David. You can just tell us your name and your university, and then if you've got a thought, throw it out, and if not, don't worry.
Okay. David Hostetter, U of T. I'm studying philosophy, environment, and art. I guess the only question I would ask would be, graduating with a degree like environmental studies where it's so broad, you don't have a specific focus necessarily. What are the strengths and benefits versus having something that is very narrowly focused where you can have a set path that you're definitely going to take versus something that's, do you have more options or fewer options, I guess?
Very good question. What do I do with this degree once I graduate? Tyler, do you want to turn the camera around on yourself?
So my name is Tyler. I did a degree in peace and conflict studies. I don't know, I guess something I've been thinking a lot about since I got here, and some of the topics and discussions that I've had both in here and outside is, I guess involves the profit issue, because that's sort of something that I see as affecting a lot of environmental stuff, is how do you make people care less about the profit and more about the environment? Because really I feel like you need to do that to make any kind of difference. So how do you translate that to businesses and to people who care about money more so than other things?
Okay.
My name is Stefan Hostetter. I'm a recent U of T grad from double major in environmental studies and philosophy. And my question is that I think there's an untapped resource in environmental studies, and it's that when you get people with the inherent nature of environmental studies, of sort of being of sort of political nature, you get a lot of students who, as I said earlier, are really, really invested. And I think that investment can be sort of, how can you use that investment to sort of, to encourage communality and sort of learning amongst the students themselves as a way to make up maybe the budget cuts that you can't do other things. But if you can foster, one thing is time much of these conflict studies, and I've been a part of that. And what they're very good at is the students are good at teaching each other their own things. And they learn a ton because their students are all in a tight program. They all learn from each other. And from what I've found other things such as philosophy at UT, which is huge, that doesn't have that sort of self-learning. And if you're in a place where you're having budget cuts, how can you use sort of that sort of resource of these are very passionate students who actually really care about it and are happy to talk about it? And how can you foster a community where they actually teach each other things? I think that's something that should be thought about.
Thank you very much. We'll go here.
I'm Carolyn Peach Brown. I'm professor and director of environmental studies at the University of Prince Edward Island. I guess for me it's really interesting to be at this conference at this point in time because at UPEI we are evolving from a minor in environmental studies that students take in either a BSc or a BA. But I have a proposal in place for a Bachelor of Environmental Studies, and all along our minor has maintained the balance of having equal courses in science and in arts, and we're doing that with our proposal. So this whole discussion on the integration of humanities, social sciences, and science for me is very, very interesting as we move forward, especially because in our graduate programs, we've also maintained that as well, even though they're called environmental sciences, it also means social sciences as well as science. So for me, it's interesting as in my own development of my own program at UPEI to learn from what other people are doing. So how do we put in place an undergraduate program in environmental studies? What does that look like? What does that include? And then also at UPEI, we're in the process of developing a school of sustainability, something right now. There's working titles for that. And so that calls into question the position of environmental studies within the organizational structure of the university, and that's why the evolution is taking place. And so for me, I'm interested in both of these in terms of conceptualization of degree programs as well as university organizational structure. So.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now go to the University of Winnipeg.
I'm Darshani. I won't say my surname is really long. So I'm Darshani from University of Winnipeg. I'm the present director of, I was the director of environmental studies program, but now that the change to a department, I'm the chair now, the Department of Environmental Studies and Sciences. My issue is something to follow up on what you said about the first year courses, the first year introductory courses in environmental studies, like you said in Toronto, that you are like co-teaching the course, parts of the course. Whereas we do it in a different way. We have like 5 sections of the course, each section having about 25 students, and some sections have been taught by social scientists, some sections have been taught by biologists. So I'm a soil scientist, I teach one section. So which makes it very different in a way. Maybe all sections are not having the same strengths in some of the topics. So I'm wondering which way is better, whether co-teaching the courses or whether sections being taught by different people.
Okay, very good. Here.
I'm Mickey Noble. I'm the Director of the School of Environment and Sustainability at Royal Roads University. And just kind of following up on our conversation earlier on, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting is that when faculty from my department left for this conference, the humanities people came, the social science people came, and the science people stayed home. So how do we actually get the conversation and we get science people to come? Because if they're not all going to the same places, it's a little hard to have the conversation that keeps everybody coming back together. And that just encourages, the kind of split that we're talking about.
Okay. Jeanette?
My name is Janet. I'm at York doing a master's in environmental studies. My big interest is in education. I'm an elementary teacher as well, and I'm really interested in how interdisciplinarity can be and should be part of the thinking from an early age within education.
My name is Kim, and I just finished a master's in teaching at Boise, and am now a certified elementary teacher. And I think I'm interested in both conversations around how to celebrate environmental studies. The reason I was drawn to elementary education is because it is a space where you can do interdisciplinary work. I get to teach everything, and that's exciting to me. And yet, when I was at Boise, I was really disillusioned with how environmental education is not being taught to pre-service teachers at all, to the point where I organized a conference for all of the 150 students in the Master's in Teaching program, so a 2-year program. And when Bruce Cox from Greenpeace came and asked how many of them, thought that climate change was a pressing issue, only a few hands went up. And he said, how many of you think climate change is really happening? And maybe a third of the hands went up. So this was really a big shock to me. And I feel like I'm really interested in how environmental studies and teacher education and faculties of ed can strengthen their ties.
Okay. We're just introducing ourselves and then giving one thought for discussion today.
Oh, okay. I'm Andreas Klinke. I'm at the Memorial University of Newfoundland at the Environmental Policy Institute, which is not affiliated with environmental studies, but we have environmental studies. And I'm teaching their undergraduate courses. So one thought is, which follows to the previous session, is I think environmental studies is also for environmental policy. For me, the big issue, the big question is how can we better address problem solving and problem solving capacities, and that would go beyond only understanding, so looking for solution, policy solution beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Robert McClellan. I work at Ottawa U, so I have to start with the bilingualism thing. I coordinate the environmental studies program at Ottawa U, which is an undergraduate program. I bet most people didn't know we had one, but we do. It's interdisciplinary. It's a small program that has catered to the federal government over the years. Our graduates have a very high placement rate with the feds because they're all bilingual when they come out. But as you know, that's not such a great employment market these days. So we need to start thinking about what else our graduates might do, especially as we're now starting to add interdisciplinary master's programs and in 2 years a PhD. What are these folks going to do? So I would particularly be interested in hearing from the students, the active students, or those who did an undergraduate environmental studies degree, to tell me what are the skills or skill sets that you need to make a living after you leave the hallowed halls of academia? Because I desperately want to know so that we can start giving that to our students.
Okay, very good.
Merci.
Merci. Peter?
My apologies, and my back will be to somebody. Peter Todmers. I teach in the school. I'm at Dalhousie University. I teach in the School for Resource and Environmental Studies. Historically, a fairly small unit focused on master's student education. I also, for the last 2 years, have been teaching in our relatively new College of Sustainability, sort of university-wide, undergraduate student-focused Hydra. It's very interesting, and my issue comes out of that experience. But I also engage with PhD students through an interdisciplinary PhD program because we don't have access to our own PhD program, so I'm fitting in. My question, there's a few that I could have offered up, but the one that I'm most seized of lately is, and this may be the wrong audience, or maybe it's the right audience, the perfect audience, is the criticality of numeracy and scientific literacy amongst environmental studies students. I discovered, and I don't have good data on it, but I would say that maybe a third of the senior undergraduate students in our College of Sustainability program are conflating fundamental environmental issues. They're confusing climate change with ozone depletion still. Some of them cannot add their way out of a paper bag. They bring all the passion and enthusiasm to their scholarship, but many of them are just not willing to understand the way we currently collectively understand the way the world works.
Okay, thank you. We now come to our last two speakers who have had time to cogitate. We are about to be blown away by the depth of the insight that is going to be offered here, and we give the floor to you, sir.
Thanks. I'm Gary Bowden. I actually teach in the Department of Sociology at the University of New Brunswick. I was involved with setting up the environmental studies minor that they have that's since changed shape and gone to forestry and environmental management and become something else, and that's another story. I'm going to break the mold here, having that big setup, and say rather than adding to the long list that's already there, I'm going to emphasize multiple ones that I think I wanted to ensure get talked about. The budgetary issue, the funding process, I'd like to see us leave here with some sort of space and network structure to continue the engagement in the conversation, and also to deal with some of the specifics of curriculum about especially the first year program, as was mentioned earlier as part of the plan, but hasn't been picked up yet.
Okay, Barbara.
I'm Barbara Rader. I'm the Dean of Environmental Studies at York University for one more month. And I could talk about a lot of these things, but I think the thing that I've been struggling with most recently is how we communicate to those who aren't in environmental studies what it is we do, what it is we're about, so that that's basically it. How do we communicate?
Okay, thank you. Well, I think this is quite an accomplishment just to get this list of the current issues, particularly among a group which is as representative as pan-Canadian as it is. I think this is going to be simply right here, quite an addition. However, we've now got a bit of time to continue the dialogue, so I'm not going to pluck any one of these out. I'm just going to throw it open to, unless, Tim, you've got anything you want to throw in.
I think I just want to highlight that some of these issues we will be dealing with. We will have 45-minute blocks to actually focus on them in small groups, and then large group discussions tomorrow. Specifically, for instance, the curriculum for first-year programs, we have 45 minutes set aside to actually specifically give examples of what it is we are doing in our first-year programs, both on a grad and undergrad level. You'll get to self-select in that way, so we'll have time for those discussions. The budgetary issues will be coming up, I think, in a couple presentations to a certain extent. But I don't know if we've actually put a lot of time in relation to creating a space for that. So we might want to talk a little bit about that, or maybe readdress it again tomorrow afternoon and try to find space in the agenda for that, because that seems to be one of those that has come up numerous times by various people: budgetary issues and profit issues and corporatization and whatnot. And yeah, but I think a lot of these things will be dealt with differently. So I don't know if anybody wants to start with something specific.
We'll throw it out. Ingrid.
I just wanted to say that when I was referring to budgetary issues, what's happening is that universities are finding themselves in debt, and so they're basically downloading responsibility to individual units. And what happens then is that fosters territoriality now on the basis of money. So it's a sort of a funny situation that, in a sense, they're trying to strengthen their resiliency, their financial resiliency, by doing something that makes a lot of sense. You want people to take responsibility for their own spending. But what's happening, therefore, is that interdisciplinary programs, which were before collaborative programs, are sort of stuck in the middle because they don't have those kinds of budgets. The budgets are going to the units, and the units that wanted to play before are being prevented from playing because they say, well, we're not going to help you teach your courses because our budgets have been cut and we want to teach our students. So there's a territorial squabble that's sort of emerging from those. So it's not the corporatization of learning that I'm worried about. Of course, it'd be nice if we did, but that's sort of the reality that you're stuck with as an administrator, and it affects how you're going to run your first year programs, how you're going to teach your PhD students. It really affects. It's sad, but that's the truth.
But does this mean that the university sees environmental studies as a luxury that we can afford in expansionary times, but not in...
Oftentimes that's
because certainly that's the case in governments. When the Harris government came in Ontario and cut spending, the ministry which took the biggest cut was the Ministry of Labour, and then after that it was Environment and Natural Resources. These are the weak within government, they're the weak units. And I think you would look into firms and find that the environmental management units within firms would also be the weak units. It's this idea, yes, we can protect the environment as long as capitalism is just booming. That's part of the problem.
It's interesting too. I just want to build on that too, because one of the discussions we're having in our faculty is one of the ways to have these kinds of discussions, even within faculty, is by having forums to bring the different faculty that are representative, different kind of core interests, into discussions. And so one of the ways of doing this is having these kinds of courses where you have co-teaching. But again, these kinds of budgetary issues do have impacts on whether or not you can have co-taught courses.
That's right.
Because of those issues. So all of a sudden it trickles down from this kind of big issue of just money that actually then has impact on your pedagogical values, the curriculum, and the whole idea of what interdisciplinarity is and whether you can actually do it.
We're just going to make a quick observation, though. One of the challenges for us to really play out the question around budgeting is the heterogeneity that exists across the country, because all of our universities are in slightly different contexts and allocate money differently internally. At an undergraduate level, it flows differently than at a graduate level for us.
True.
So but we can make some maybe general observations about how we can keep ourselves relevant.
I would say, I agree. Keep it general, but mostly just recognizing that all universities right now are being hit with budget cuts across not just Canada, North America. And how are you going to be dealing with that because it's a reality of how you actually offer programs.
Okay, other comments?
A question then. I mean, how realistic is it to go after administration, with a capital A, to deal with these budget constraints? Because it seems that since the 70s, the glorious environmental 70s, administration has ballooned in all university aspects. And I hear from colleagues who go to Europe and find these wonderful departments that are entirely run by the professors in the departments, and you know the institution is owned by the professors. Are there strategies for that? Do they exist? Is that relevant?
My understanding within universities that the administrative core has, over the last 30 or 40 years, increased significantly in comparison to the teaching. But I thought the answer to all this was pretty simple. I thought you just raised tuition. Can't you just do that? Hasn't anybody thought of that in Canada?
And make the
just
classes
increase
bigger. Make the classes bigger too.
Yeah.
Make more money for professors.
More TAs.
Yeah, so York is just starting this activity-based budgeting, right? Which is going to completely change the way we do budgeting. So right now, everything goes into central, and central hands it out according to formulas that are long lost in the sands of time. Nobody knows why different faculties are getting different amounts of money. As I understand what's going to happen in the future is that each faculty will get those BIUs, the basic income units from the undergrads, and the whatever provincial grants that come with other students, right? And so you get your tuition money and the government grants. That will all go to the dean, but then the dean will have to pay for their use of space, for their cleaning, for the centralized services, and we have all kinds of joint programs. I mean, we have joint programs with the business school, with the law school, with the faculty of education, and the faculty of fine art. So that's where that question comes in. What's going to be the formula for sharing programs? We want to actually do more of that. We want to actually do something with the faculty of health. We don't know how that's going to happen, but I do know, and it's not pretty, but you know, we're told not to try to cannibalize off of each other. But the temptation to do that is like, that's one of the ways you get money, is you try to attract students from the rest of the campus to your classes. Because then you get more money.
I know.
You know?
Very territorial.
It is, and so it sets up this fight between where you'd actually like to be more cooperative. The other ways, you know, so it's the income you get from increasing your undergraduates. That's about the only way. That's one way. The other is the professional development courses, which we haven't done yet, but are coming soon, and fundraising. And then you have the issue of, you don't want to just take any money. You want to take money for what you want to do, not for what somebody else wants you to do. So that's the other
Remember
struggle.
a program of corporate social responsibility taking money from a tobacco company. It was like all over the news. I like Barbara's comment too about communicate beyond BS, what you're all about. And I just wanted to throw a quick point in. My experience has been that what's neat about interdisciplinary programs is that most people who go into them recognize they don't know everything, and so they want to learn from other people. So you have to have a certain personality is what I'm trying to get. And you're talking about forums, and you're talking about going to the administration. I've worked with administrators who are fabulous. They get it like this. Fantastic. And then you get the person where they just have this wavelength. You're not on the same wavelength, and you're never going to get through to them. And so it's a very personal kind of thing sometimes, that it really depends on the people who are there. And you hope that they're good people there, because if they're not, it's just you're hitting a brick wall, and you can't do it.
But it doesn't sound like there's any way to remove people. Having a smaller administration, downside.
Remove those people.
Yeah.
Okay, remove the people.
No,
I'm like,
the unions are gathering that data all the time and sending it out every year as part of their bulletins, and it's an issue as part of union negotiations. So that's how it gets against the bullying, because they've been watching that happen even in the last 5 years.
So it becomes a union.
Yes, it becomes a union.
Yes, sir.
I would like to make one comment to this, but it cuts into the question whether it's better in Europe or not. So I worked at universities in 3 different countries in Europe, So it might look better from outside, but factually it is not. The only country where it is better is Switzerland, but in Germany or UK it is like that. The issue with the budget cut is the same in these countries. You see it at the moment in the UK, so they're cutting all of that. They're starting with environmentally related programs and with social science related programs. And to recover from that, you can see that, observe that at the moment in Germany, the cuts are 10 years ago, when they did the cuts 10 years ago, now they recover. To get that level back, it needs almost 1 decade. So, and the point for me, the question is, they do not cut those programs and disciplines where they see a profit for the economy. So, because these are strong arguments for all stakeholders to keep the money and even get more out of that. But I do not want to see that environmental studies or other environmentally related programs get instrumentalized in the way that we say we need to see the profit outcome for the economy.
Okay, Nick.
I just wanted to continue with this communicating beyond ES. I think it goes beyond the administration. I think that was what you were touching on as well. But I mean, it seems to me one of the whole history of not environmental study, but environmentalism in general is just constantly responding to another crisis. Every time we respond to a crisis, we give up on our ethics, our morals, and what makes us unique. How do we maintain that creative aspect? How do we maintain the promise of what I think brought most of us to environmental studies in this constant context of budgetary cuts, of crisis, of response. Like, we keep on trying to figure out, how do we fit in? We don't. Like, let's not fit in, right? I mean, we constantly go back, well, there's this crisis, and then the government did this, and the government came in, they cut this. It's inevitable. It is constantly going to be this battle that keeps coming back to us. We can't solve it. So let's embrace, I mean, I'm totally never touched any administrative role, and I hope I never have to, because I know so often what these roles do to so many passionate people, but they come back, and that passion is still there. So how do we make damn sure that passion doesn't get taken away? I've heard the passion. Come on, it's there.
Okay, if you say so.
But it's a scary thing, right? The whole history of crisis talk has screwed the environmental movement.
But then presumably also, Nick, if you're talking about communicating, there's two things. There's how do we ourselves maintain an optimistic and celebrate, as you're saying. And for sure, I know this goes on with my students. It's so easy for environmental studies to flip over into a fairly tragic, negative, and the students, my young students, don't want to hear that. And of course they don't. Absolutely. So how do we maintain an optimistic outlook, given the realities that we're aware of? And then, having done that within ourselves, how do you communicate that outside?
It's certainly a constant, but I think one of our biggest problems is this focus on what we have to give up rather than what we gain. Right? By enjoying, going for a walk, which I talk about as much as I possibly can in my class, like the freedom to go for a wander. Not a walk for me, to be a genuine wander out there. All these things that are against the norm. These things are wonderful. You gain that by getting rid of your idiot box. You don't lose something, you gain something. So it's figuring out all those positive things, like those small classes where you get together. You can't quantify that. You can't sell that to an administration. But we know how much we cherish that.
Okay.
How do we hold on to that?
Peter and then Sarah.
Every department in the university is under the same sorts of pressures. Med schools that we think of as bastions of, essential elements are the most expensive units to run on campuses. They're under incredible pressure. I think we have nowhere near the challenges that many other units have. If we were a meeting of classicists right now, if we were a meeting of theater profs, I'd be quaking in my heels. We have leverage because of the passion of undergraduate students. People come out of, the way 500 students, 3 years into our College of Sustainability, it's the second largest program at Dalhousie. That gives us a stick. Are any one of our universities going to give up? They're going to make the news by saying we've shut down our sustainability programming? No way. It's like blowing their brains out.
But do we stay alive if we become, sustainability of the structures that we're supposed to be challenging? Sustainability
Okay,
of
that's
what?
a different set of questions. But in terms of the maintaining our budget relevance and the fear, maybe I'm just being naive, but I don't share that same sense of fear right now, because what I see as a prof in a small unit who's about to become a director of our unit, I see our business school wanting us to do things with them. I see the need. We need to be teaching more. Everyone wants a piece of us. And what we have to be smart about is choosing who we teach with so that we don't co-opt ourselves, or we further the direction that we want to pursue in terms of societal change. But I think right now I'm in a great position within a university in terms of fighting from our corner, a very strong corner.
You just started your position.
What's that?
You just started.
Yeah, and I haven't even actually signed the papers yet.
I'm not being cynical. I'm being pulling your leg.
We'll see a year from now.
We have to see the strategic.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay, so I've got Sarah and Kim and Stephen. Sarah.
Well, I just wanted to make a philosopher's observation, which is I think that there's something particular about crisis talk in environmental studies. And so on the one hand, we're talking about the crisis of university funding right now, which is real. But actually our discipline is already formed, our discipline, if we want to call it that, is formed around the notion of an environmental crisis. And lots of us are trying to move beyond that already, right? And transform that thinking so we don't all sound like David Suzuki did it through the 80s, right? And not that there wasn't a time for that, but we're trying to do something new. And when I was listening to you, I was like listening to what you were saying about crisis talk and budgeting and thinking there's actually already something particular about our relationship to crisis talk in thinking about environment. And there's some way that the two things map together, which is actually an opportunity for the kind of creativity that we're hoping for.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm wearing my little red square, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, and I think I see the split in the environmental movement too, having spent 8 years working for NGOs. And there's those who are prepared to kind of gather the sticks, not to use the war metaphor, and then there's those who have kind of become obsessed with the carrots. And I feel like in an environmental studies movement within academia, we need to not always have to assume that we need to water ourselves down in order to preserve ourselves because of this looming crisis, but rather celebrate our strengths and celebrate what's been accomplished. Like, for example, if they wanted to make massive cuts to the Faculty of Environmental Studies at York, and the call went out, the political organizers and people I know who have a strong connection and investment in that place, there would be a huge uproar about it. And so I think rather than always kind of, wow, we've got to be careful because of this crisis, and almost fall into defeatist talk before we even get there, and be prepared sometimes to fight for what we care about. And I think that comes not with crisis talk, but with the celebration and with the enjoyment of what we've had, and with acknowledgement that amazing things have been accomplished in the couple of decades that we've had this. And I draw inspiration from the Quebec students.
So the themes that seem to be coming out are perhaps we're stronger than we think, and perhaps we should be celebrating, be positive. We've got Stephen and then Nikki.
And I think the question of worldviews here might be helpful. I mean, many have pointed out the worldview of managerialism that has crept its tentacles across so many parts of society, including the university. And I think some of this discourse does feed into, yes, we have to kind of get in step with managerialism. But I think we have to be kind of wise as serpent administrators and gentle as nonviolent and himsa doves, in the sense that there's the logic of maintenance and the logic of vision, as Gregory Baum talks about in his Massey lectures. And you can still operate under both logics without giving into a worldview of managerialism. I think that we represent, as people in environmental studies, opening students and others to a new relationship with ecosystems. And that has beauty and linings of promise and aspects of affectivity that are very engaging, so that we're not just the new gloomy science, as it were, displacing economics. But we can do that, I think, knowing at a worldview level that we're not participating in this managerialistic approach that John Ralston Saul and others have talked about in terms of university. That we have an alternative subversive dimension that Tim talked about earlier, but it's also within an invitational relationship of a new dynamic, a new interchange with Earth systems that has a lot of promise. It's not just hair shirts, sackcloth, and ashes. There's a lot of beauty in this and a lot of vitality. And I think if we can help communicate that, and with our increasing numbers, and with the increasing environmental issues, that this is a way that we can articulate a different place in the university that does just not become under the carapace of managerialism and budget statements.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things that I think we have to remember, we have a unique strength to bring to the table. Sorry? We have a unique strength to bring to the table, and because of the very interdisciplinary nature of what we are, we should be able to talk to all these people in words that actually make sense. Right? I mean, that's one of the things that discipline-bounded things don't do very well. Right? I can remember having my grandfather come from the family farm to see the microbiology lab I did my master's degree in. We came back to the house and my mom said to him, what did he think about what I'd been doing? Because I'd been nattering away the whole time, totally oblivious to the fact that I was making no sense as far as he was concerned because he had no context. And his response to my mom was that I was obviously very interested in what I was doing, but he didn't understand why I was being paid to make soup and electrocute jello, which is what molecular biology looks like if you have no context for it. Well, one of the things that we bring to the table as a strength is our ability to talk to people using real words, because we have our fingers on all of those pies and in all of those conversations. And I think sometimes we forget that that's one of the things that we actually do well. So rather than despairing of the fact that we don't fit anywhere, maybe we should be delighted with the fact that that gives us lots of conversations to be involved in and lots of ability to talk.
Yeah, good point. Okay, Robert, and then Simon.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on a sort of a thread that I hear, which is, and maybe it's the type of students I see at the undergraduate level, but they're quite content to go out and either organize, as they often do on Parliament Hill, on Kyoto and things like that, but also aspire to working within the same bureaucracy that they protest against, or even work in the private sector, with construction firms and development firms. And they see these as entry points to, they're quite content to work within as well as without. And I think that's a good theme to aspire to, which is you don't have to be in these dialectic relationships of, us and them, the man and not the man, or whatever you want to call it kind of thing. It's okay to be all those things simultaneously. And so I foster that in my students. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but that's what we're doing. I think at the graduate level it changes a little bit, because at the graduate level we encourage students to get more into the meta-philosophy and the theories behind what we're doing and so on, but 95% of the students don't aspire to learn those types of things there at the undergraduate level, and I think that's okay. And I think we can, we also have big numbers at the first year level, and we need to cultivate that.
Okay, Simon?
I'd like to touch upon, build on two discussions here. One that we just had, and that's the celebrating the interdisciplinary nature as a positive tool that we possess, and also that of the literacy. You spoke about that, especially when it comes to appropriating the science and the knowledge. We spoke at the beginning of the day about the depth and breadth, and realizing we can't always have the depth. But I'm wondering, can we not think of interdisciplinary environmental studies as a depth in itself? You have a depth of ability to weave through different disciplines, understand them, but also a hermeneutic you've developed that very few have, to know when you have to stop. When you say, I can speak about indigenous ways of knowing, and I can also then speak about quantum physics in a way that might be intelligible to the lay people. But I also have developed a skill to know when I have to stop that conversation and defer to those who have a depth on just that particular. And so when we speak of interdisciplinary, it's just having a breadth. I think that's a false dichotomy. I think it's a depth of skill to know how to navigate and also how to be literate.
Okay, I'm going to interject a procedural note here. What's happening for the rest of the day, we have right here in this room a wine and cheese celebration, and that's on the house. That's very kindly paid for by the programs which have provided a financial contribution for this. There's a time limit on it. We're starting late, but the bar closes